Alex, are we good?
Just one. You're good to start.
Thank you, Alex. Hope everybody had a great summer. Welcome to the September 6th, 2002 meeting of Community Board 6's Environment and Parks Committee meeting. My name is Kevin O'Keefe, and I'm proud to be the chair of this committee. Tonight, we are joined by Community Associate Alex Crawford. This meeting is called to order at 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, as a reminder, New York State law now requires that all community board members have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. Now, if your camera is not on and your name is not properly displayed, you cannot count towards quorum. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. Following the committee's discussion, I will field questions from the public. Now, I want to do a personal note. In today's world of full video recordings and automated transcripts from meetings, I believe that minute taking is no longer required, but it is required. That said, we are required to have minute taker for tonight's meeting. No one stepped forward. And also, I shouldn't ask someone in the group to do something that I am not willing to do myself. And as such, during my remaining time as chair of this committee, until when minutes are no longer required, I will fill that role for this committee starting today for each meeting. This includes any minutes pending from past sessions. We will now take attendance by roll call. Alexandra will conduct the roll call.
Committee members, I will call your name and you will unmute yourselves. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. My apologies, technical difficulty. Marty Barrett.
Present.
Matt Bondi.
Here.
Claire Brennan.
Present.
Jeannie D'Onofrio.
Present.
Paige Judge. Anton Malner.
Present.
Raj Nayar. Kevin O'Keefe.
Present.
Reshma Patel.
Present, and I'm happy to take minutes if you would like.
I appreciate that. I think in the spirit of things, I will be happy to do it.
Okay.
Maybe I'll run it by you for any typos. How's that?
All right.
All right, it's a deal.
Dean Stephanides. Mark Thompson. Maura Wong is excused, and Letty Simon.
I'm here.
Since your camera isn't on, you won't be counted towards quorum, but
That
I know that
is
you're still
correct.
here. Mhm.
Thank you very much.
So we
Thank
do have
you.
a quorum.
Thank you. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office. It should appear on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt this agenda as stated. No objection, members of the committee. A reminder that for this or any other function, you can raise your hand through Zoom. Again, no objections, so the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. Now, the minutes for the January 7th committee meeting were distributed ahead of time. If there are no objections, we will adopt these minutes as drafted. Again, committee members, if you object to adopting these minutes, you may raise your hand virtually. Do not see any objections. The minutes from the January 7th committee meeting are adopted and will soon be available on the CB6 website. Now, in order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few required ground rules. Number one, no one may speak until granted the floor. Two, committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. Three, the chat function should never be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. Any such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us of any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information, such as an email address, that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Number 4, when a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. Number 5, we are required by New York state law to have a transcript of this meeting, so please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to this discussion. Number 6, committee members are required by the state open meetings law to have their Zoom cameras on and your first and last name displayed during tonight's entire meeting, from call to order to adjournment. Again, I know we've covered this, but this is all required language. If you must step away from your computer briefly, you are required to leave your camera on. We start with agenda item number 1, report from the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation. I do see Sheena here. I do believe this is Sheena Kaufman, our esteemed district manager. I believe also possibly we have Steve Simon, the Chief of Staff of the Manhattan Parks Commissioner's Office, who may be joining us. That said, Sheena, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So really don't have much to report. Murphy's Brothers is supposed to start this fall. That's about the biggest news right now that we have. I don't have an exact date. As soon as I get one, I'll send an email out. I know there were some questions about Southern Place. So I got in contact with our PEP officer that that governs the area. So he's been sending undercover units out to address it. It hasn't been that often because they've been quite busy. So he said he's going to do a couple of things this week.
Let me jump in on that. I think we're good there. I had another update on that today, Sheena. That's in good shape now. That may change, but thank you for that.
Right. He said he said they were able to issue some, some tickets and warnings during this thing. So that seems to be going well. And I have nothing else to report.
Okay.
If anybody has any questions, I'm here to answer.
Yeah, I've got a couple of people I know here that do want to ask. I can start with them and then we'll see if there's anything in chat.
Okay.
It was interesting. I just read, it came out last week, but under the headline Ode to City Parks, NPR did a nice deep dive into city parks. The piece noted, quote, city parks are crucial precisely because they are mundane. Their accessibility is what gives them their power, unquote. But as we all know, with power comes responsibility. I do, with that in mind, I want to mention that the NPR piece also proclaimed keeping trees healthy is a huge part of protecting parks and people from climate change. Stands of diverse and native trees absorb and trap more carbon dioxide than any other type of greenery. The carbon stored in the forests of New York City is equal to the carbon released by more than 400,000 cars driving for a year, according to a 2020 study. Now, the Murray Hill Neighborhood Association has requested time in front of this committee to pose questions to the Parks Department about trees. The Murray Hill Neighborhood Association, you have the floor. And we are going to have them on camera.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mike Land, welcome.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for having me. Geez, where do I start? Do you want me to just jump to the questions? I have a little bit of a...
Yeah, this is question time. So if you could pose any of those questions,
right.
tree
Okay,
questions
so,
you have.
we are starting an Adopt a Tree program. That notice is coming out this week. With that, I do have two poignant questions. Who is responsible for paying for the tree bed expansions when a tree is approved to be planted? That seems to be a little bit of a mystery right now as to who's doing that. And then I really, as I peel the onion on with Parks Department, Forestry, Community Board, everyone talks about they who is they who's deciding on when, where, and how the trees will be planted. This seems to be a big mystery, as per our conversations, Sheena, sometimes, and Kevin, you and I as well, like to know who they are. And, I've written to Forestry, talked to a lovely lady over there, but don't seem to be getting an answer on if we were to plant trees in Murray Hill, I'd like to see that we're not overlapping with trees that may be planted this fall, if they're going to go ahead, if Parks has already got their list, and they're going to go ahead and plant some trees in Murray Hill. We'd like
Okay.
to know who they are.
Michael Ann, thank you. I know there was 2 questions there. If we can address that, I guess, to Sheena.
Well, I don't know who they is. Our forestry unit deals with that, and it's a team that deals. It's all in one. So a lot of this is going through you have to go through 311 and put in a complaint, and then they're supposed to address it from there. My unit, I don't take care of that. That's a separate entity from me.
Sheena, who can she follow up? When I say she, the Murray Hill Neighborhood Association. Or anyone else?
They can actually contact forestry, the forestry unit through 311, and they supposed to respond within 48 hours or so. I don't understand what's the backlog or what's going on, but it should go through them. I can ask a little further, but I'll probably get the same answer that she's getting.
Yeah.
So it's not that, I don't control that area of that.
Okay. Do you know, Sheena, thank you. And thank you, Michael Ann. Do you know if, and then we do have a hand raised with Marty Barrett. So I'm going to go to Marty first. You have the floor, Marty.
Yeah, the district services cabinet should deal with this. So when the manager goes to the monthly meeting, they should bring it up there, and it should be handled directly. I don't see why we would need to. They should go through 311. We have a direct connection to the Parks Committee, Parks Department.
Michael Ann, have you tried that route before?
Oh, we have over 150 311 reports. Status is on pending, and all of them are. We're not getting to this for another 3 years. But this is why we're doing the Adopt a Tree program. But as I said, as I peel the onion, this whole, who's the decision maker is really hard to find, get these answers. No one has the answer. And who's making these decisions on these million trees, et cetera, et cetera. But I'd like to go back and ask Gina about the expansion.
Well, Michael Ann, I'm going to just politely interrupt you right now.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let everybody know, and
Okay.
I'm happy that Steve Simon, again, the Chief of Staff of the Manhattan Borough Commissioner for New York City Parks and Recreation, is on as well. Just wanted to acknowledge that Steve is here. Steve, we're talking about basically trees. If you want, Michael Ann, quickly summarize what you just went over in 30 words or fewer.
I'll try my best. Hi, Steve. My name is Michael Ann Rowe. I'm the chair of Green and Clean in Murray Hill Neighborhood Association. We are launching an Adopt a Tree program, relaunching it, and asked a couple of questions about who is they when they refer, Parks Department refers to they as in making decisions about when and where and how trees are replaced, and also the expansion of the tree beds. Like to know if Parks is responsible for that upon approving of getting a tree planted.
I'm sorry. Well, the decisions on when or where to plant trees, those decisions are made by our forestry division. They're not made by Sheena or me. They're made by people who are experts in dealing with trees, and so they do inspections of the proposed sites. They make sure there are no conflicts with utilities or other reasons that might impede the planting of a tree, and then they add it to the list, and if it's acceptable, and they get to it as quickly as they can. I did, in fact, earlier today, try to get a list of the sites where they are hoping to plant trees in Ward 6, but I don't think it's ready yet.
But again, who's making that decision on where those trees are being planted? We have 311 requests for over 3 years now.
Well, there is a, we are inundated with requests. There is a fairly long I don't think that's unusual. I think there is a fairly long lag time in satisfying these requests.
Okay.
And especially lately, last few years, we've had a lot of problems securing tree planting contracts. There were actually a couple of seasons where we weren't able to get a contract, and including I think this last spring, I don't think we had a contract in Manhattan. Some of the prices have been coming in extraordinarily high, and we've had to try to repackage and rebid these contracts in order to get something that we could afford. So that I think is also added to the delays in satisfying requests.
Well, also the delay itself is something, because we are waiting on, like now that we're expected to get an answer 30 plus days out, you know, on whether we can plant in a certain location or not. And so there seems to be a huge backlog of actually getting the permissions.
Well, we can follow up offline to make sure we go through that process. I knew that there is some frustrations there. I think with one bed that was told that they can't plant there, even though there was a tree there. On a similar subject, I think
You can send me the Kevin. You can send me the specifics on that, and I can follow up.
absolutely. And since we have both Sheena and Steve here, can we move on to removal of stumps? Because I know, Sheena, you've been receptive to that. Can you take us through the process of how something, if we identify that a stump needs to be removed?
Okay,
how
because
that takes place?
I sent it to, it's like almost similar to the same project. We file a 311 complaint. They come out and they inspect it, and then it gets put on a list. How they prioritize it, you know, we don't know.
Well,
You know,
Well,
it's-
most of the stumps are actually removed in the process of excavating a site and planting a new tree. So,
No.
Well, we could, Michael Ann, I know you,
we do have a separate tree stump removal contract, but I believe most of our stumps get removed at the point at which we're planting the new trees.
okay. Michael, Ann, we're going to follow up offline, and I appreciate the
Yeah.
Parks Department allowing us to take this to next steps offline. But yes, as Michael Ann said to me once, the Murray Hill Neighborhood Association is stumped about stumps. Okay. Let me point out, by the way, after a 2-year pause, the Murray Hill Neighborhood Association is bringing back the annual Murray Hill Festival along Park Avenue. Yay. Saturday, October 15th has been set from 11 to 6. So thank you for all your good work, Michael Ann and your colleagues. Appreciate it. Next, for Parks Department questions, the Stuyvesant Park Neighborhood Association has requested time. Phyllis Mangles, on behalf of the association, you have the floor for questions.
I just unmuted. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everybody. Hi, Steve. Hi, Sheena. Just a little follow-up to the meeting we had 7 weeks ago. And some issues that we discussed, like bench slats, were addressed. Some staffing issues were addressed. And we did get the permits for the forestry, you know, for Bartlett to come in and do the tree pruning. But a couple of things that were going to be looked into, such as the situation with the electricity in the East Park, which runs the in-ground watering system, we have no resolution on. And we followed up with, I think Jason followed up with you, Steve, a couple of times, and we got no feedback. And I followed up on the light situation, which is a DOT issue, but because it's in the park, the commissioner was going to reach out to DOT. He was going to reach out to Con Edison to see if there could be some movement on an electrical line. And we got no response. And we understand they're difficult situations, especially the electrical situation, but, you know, some communication, whether it's, even if it's bad news, would be appreciated. And so until this rain today, basically the East Park had minimal amount of watering, and we have plants dying and drooping. But the more important issue is the lack of communication. We waited a year to get that meeting, and the meeting went very well. And there were commitments made about reaching out. And then there was no follow-up. And when we followed up, we had no communication. It's very
Okay.
disappointing.
Thank you for your question. Let's give this over to Parks.
Well, I apologize for that. Things in, things in our office right now are a little, we're going through a transition. Commissioner Castro is leaving, and we're getting a new commissioner in the next 2 weeks. And things that we had intended to do have sort of been set aside while we're dealing with a lot of other internal issues at the moment. But the electricity in the east side of the park, I held off getting back to you because I'm still waiting to get a firm idea as to what it may cost us. It looks as though it's beyond our ability to restore the electricity ourselves. Looks like it's going to be a capital project.
Mhm.
And I don't know how much it's going to run, but I think at this point I'm going to have to ask the community board to include this particular item on the on your FY24 capital budget request list.
And we will consider that. That's coming up. Thank you. We do have a question that's related to Phyllis's comment.
But let me just add something. I thought we had at least figured out some way to restore irrigation to that side of the park. I thought
No,
I was given some kind of I was given some word that we had done. Our plumbers had restored some kind of irrigation there.
that was on the West Park. In the West Park,
Oh.
there were 4 zones that
Yeah.
weren't working. And so, you know, we were hand watering the beds, those 4 beds during the heat wave. And the plumbers did come 2 weeks ago and restored those 4 zones, but that was in the West Park. There's
All right.
nothing in the East Park.
All right, so I had the two confused.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's some level of progress. I mean, we did do something, at least on the west side of the park. But the east side is definitely problematic.
And I hope you can stick around, Phyllis, for our discussions about budget requests for fiscal year 2024.
Sure.
I'm just going to take this opportunity because there are some comments in Q&A, and one it actually says to add to Phyllis's comment. This is from Elisa DeVito. It says to add to Phyllis's comment on the electric in the East Park at Stuyvesant. The volunteers of Stuyvesant Park gardeners have spent about 80 hours watering what they could by hand since June. Elisa, I'm very much aware of the wonderful work that you're doing there. In fact, I walked by, sorry I missed you. I saw Robert last week planting away. So, you know, such a huge addition to that park. I think you have a separate question too, Elisa. There was a mention of a generator as a temporary solution. That's right, we did talk about that. Is that no longer possible as a generator for the power need?
I would think that if it was possible, we would have done that. But
I think that was discussed, and it was said that they weren't using generators anymore for some particular reason that I don't recall.
all right, well, I'll have to go back tomorrow and check on that.
Okay,
They-
I'm going
they-
to reference. Thank you, Phyllis. Did we do you feel we gave you the floor enough, or do you have any other additional questions?
Well, in that meeting, they talked about a water cannon coming in that week, of the meeting, and that didn't happen. What exactly, Steve, is a water cannon? Bonnie had mentioned it in the meeting.
I don't know, we have, well, I don't know that we call them, she may have called it a water cannon. We have water trucks that shoot water from the sides.
Well, the water truck came in on Saturday for the first time. And so that goes to the question, if the water trucks were available, why did it take 7 weeks to get it into Stuyvesant when you know that the irrigation system wasn't working and we had this terrible heat drought going on?
I don't know. I can't answer that question.
Okay.
Thank you,
Well,
Phyllis. And
can I
again,
say
thank-
one more thing, Kevin?
Sure.
Just one more thing. So since this is going to be an ongoing issue,
Is
because
this
this
a question? Hopefully this is a question.
Yeah, it is a question. Since this is going to be an ongoing issue, because it's going to be a capital project, which is going to take years, can Parks come up with some sort of plan for next season's watering of the East Park, so that we can get ahead of any drought situation that might arise next year due to climate change?
Well, it looks as though we're going to have to do that. Yes.
Okay, I'll hold you to it.
All right.
Thank you.
Phyllis. Thank you for all the great work you do. I'll just give you one example in case anybody's looking for something to do that day. Sunday, September 18th from 3 to 5. The Stuyvesant Park Neighborhood Association will help celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month in the park with live music from the Afro-Latiners. But check out, there's other events as well. Let's move on to, hi, yes, you're welcome. Agenda item number 2 is discussion of proposed fiscal year 2024 budget requests. Before we start, please note if there are any questions about the budget request process. I can be of help, but more prominently, our committee member, Reshma Patel, is the chair of the Budget and Government Affairs Committee. Reshma, I don't know if you care to address things about the process, for example, deadlines for submitting community, I should say the budget requests to your committee. If you want to have anything, I think it would be helpful for you to have before.
Yeah. So we have our September meeting is next Monday. And that is also a public hearing. So for those members of the public who are here, if you would like to join in anything you've mentioned here, like with the water issue, we are going to talk about it and put it in our budget request right now. But if there's any other requests people would want, we do have a public hearing. The budget request, as well as a much larger community needs statement, which you can find on the CB6 website, is submitted at the end of October. And so our October 11th meeting will be the final meeting. Ideally, we'd like to have everything done by the September meeting, but there is one other meeting in October where we could make changes to current requests or add requests.
Thank you, very helpful. We're going to try to get a lot done tonight. In preparation for this discussion on this agenda item, members, you have each been given a link to the CB6 budget request Airtable. Alex, I think you have brought that up. Did you filter it so that it only shows the Environment and Parks Committee's requests?
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Can you
Always
see
a step
them?
ahead of me.
Can you see their screen?
What's that? Sorry.
Can you see the
Yes.
screen?
Now
Okay,
I can, yep. Now, we have been clear that this meeting will be possibly our final discussions of any potential additions to this list. As such, I will cover incoming requests that are not on this list and to see if there are any objection to their addition. We will also have the chance to reject those existing proposed budget requests that the committee feels are outdated or no longer needed. First up, Friends of Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza, or Friends of DHP, if you prefer, has requested time. The Friends of group does a lot of great work and hosts many events, but it has it has 3 budget requests. 2 have been outstanding. 2 were submitted last year for part of our recommended items. fixed foundations at the, I should say fixed fountains at the park, and security cameras. Can you pull those items, Alex, up each individually? And I'd love to give somebody from the Friends of group, maybe Ann Saxon, Hirsch, the floor to see if it's still, the language still reflects what they think needs to be done. Does that make
First,
sense?
first I should add that the item about security cameras in DAG Hammarskjöld Plaza is on the Public Safety Committee's list.
Okay, so let's, I did see it on our, okay, it's not on this list. I thought I saw it at some point.
It was previously. We've had it on the list for a while, but then it was moved to public safety last year.
Okay, thank you. So we will not address that. If Ann is here, can we give Ann the floor? And then if you could pull up the other, the non-camera, the fountains. And if not, we can just go through it, because here is, Alex, maybe you have seen, I know that the Friends of group put in the request to us. And I just wanted to see if it was reflective.
I would also like to speak on this item.
Steve, you have the floor.
All right, so I think it would be appropriate if you would change the ask. The existing money that we have for DAG Hammarskjöld is going to go towards fixing the fountains and doing some other work around the garden. What we need right now is additional money to do what was in the larger scope of work, which included some pavement work, some fencing work, some other items, I believe, maybe planting a couple of trees, taking care of some grates around trees. But there are other elements in the park that need to be addressed. And so in terms of an FY24 budget request, I don't think you need to mention the fountains, because we're going to, hopefully by the end of this year, we're going to put out a contract for bid, which will cover the fountains. I'm confident that we have the money at least to do the fountains and some other work.
Okay, you know what I'm going to do here? Thank you, Steve. Helpful. You know, Marty Barrett has always been a great support on, what should be, left on and left off. I'd love your input, Marty. Do you think taking it off with the hope?
It doesn't sound like it's continued support anymore. Continued support meant that money, the design was there, the money was there, things were going along, and it was happening. What he's saying now is that there's going to be a new contract, and it's going to be part of the new contract.
No, but Marty, I think of this as being like a two-phased project. The first phase is the one that covers the fountains. That one, I think, you could legitimately say offer continued support for. That's in the pipeline. It's funded. It's going to go out for bid. So that would be a continued support project. But the new project would cover the other items, as I mentioned earlier.
And we should have a write-up of this new project, and that would be a new capital budget expense.
Yes.
Sounds perfect. Does anybody disagree with that strategic approach?
I would just like to speak to this.
There we go. Hello,
yes.
Ann Hirsch.
Hi, and thank you, Steve. Steve has been vigilant in helping us to all work together to keep this going. Our concern has been that one piece of it would get done and not the other part. And for example, the fountains consist of masonry. So how do you separate masonry from fountains and plumbing and electrical? This is a very big contract. The lowest bid was 2.3 million, and only half of that amount of money has been committed to date. So definitely it needs to be part of the 24 budget, and as well as the 23 budget. And we haven't seen work on the fountains begin. And as Steve says, he's putting that once again into a bid process. We've already been through 3 years of bids. and stalled out. So Friends of Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza and the community but just became very concerned that there be a continuity to all of this. So I wrote a summary that I forwarded to Kevin, and if this could just all be, if anyone has any further questions, of course, Steve is the expert, but I've stayed very much on it. We had a Stipe meeting in June and we're given a very comprehensive view of the past 3 years and the whole process, but we still have seen no work start, and there's no contract as yet. So yeah, this needs to be very much on the agenda of CB6. We definitely need funding, more funding. And that would be from the council member and from our borough president, possibly the mayor's office. But the park is over 20 years old. And everything has aged and it needs work. And there's new improvements also in that package.
Thank you for your time. If again, we're just posing questions here, and do you have any additional questions beyond what you just shared?
Well, I'd like to revisit the topic of security cameras. We're very confused as to who makes the decision on security cameras. Because
well, let's thank you, Ann. Let's jump in there and just because I know there's confusion there as well.
I probably was the one who convinced you to move it over to your public safety committee because the Parks Department feels that the most effective way to handle the security cameras is to have them as part of the NYPD network, not to have a standalone camera here, one over there. It's our view that the most effective way to monitor conditions is to have it all part of one network handled by the NYPD, and they have the best cameras.
So what is
I want to make sure, and I'll be in touch with Matt, who's chair of that committee. This is something, and I think I mentioned it to you directly during Katharine Hepburn Day, but I'm very aware, as you pointed out, that especially that deer statue in the garden was repeatedly tagged with foul language bearing the name Latin Kings, and that other graffiti defaced the granite of the fountain architecture. Cameras would not have caught anybody. They don't look at these in real time, NYPD, but they certainly could have gotten to, hopefully, the suspect a lot quicker. I hope you agree. Ann.
Of course, I agree. And I thought we were talking about NYPD, but I thought that this was the forum, because we are talking about a park, to put forth the request. And I hear back from our Black officers, well, the mayor's office, we just have to hear from the mayor's office that it's a go. I see that Sutton has cameras. I just read.
No, it doesn't yet. I know it had a press. It had a press avail on that, but those cameras actually are not up yet. And anybody here wants to correct me on that. I was up there a couple of weeks ago. They're still waiting for installation.
But how do we know whose agenda they are on and whether this is or is not in a budget somewhere?
You're talking about whose budget, though? Are you talking about?
Yeah, because
anyone's?
For example, at the beginning of the year, Keith Powers said, well, I believe it's in the 2023 budget. What budget? What budget? Because now we go back to his office. Well, we're waiting to hear from the mayor's office. What does that mean?
Well, that's not a question for this committee. That's a question for the council member's office. I'd be happy to try to help you steer through, though. Although, Ann, I think you've always done a good job of getting in touch with the council member's office.
Of
but
course,
I'd be happy
we can't get an answer.
Yeah, I'll take that offline. I'd be happy to be your advocate on that.
Thank you.
Kevin,
As far as getting a meeting, I mean, not as
Kevin,
far
would
as.
you mind if I just to give an overview to people about why, when we do our community needs statement, right, that we are now giving these requests to the city for their budget, and their Office of Management and Budget puts a budget together that takes all community needs statements into account. And we didn't have that. We'd had the cameras for the last 2 or 3 years, as far as I remember. And each time we've gotten back saying that it won't be funded that year. So just to give you kind of background there, Anne, and we will include it again this year. It is in the community needs statement, as well as the budget request Airtable, which you can access on the CB6 website.
So how many cameras? Is there any kind of number of cameras or where those cameras might be positioned, or does that come as a later decision process?
So I'll have to check to see if we put a number in. As far as I recall, we did not put a number of cameras in.
Okay.
Okay, so we were told by NYPD 30,000 a piece, and I multiplied that by 5, 2 on the plaza, 3 in the garden for 150,000.
I think they might be 50,000 apiece.
Yeah, those are the multi-directional cameras.
Yes.
Yes, I had a meeting with 17th Precinct about that. They had said 50,000 for the good ones.
Oh, per camera.
Per camera, but there's many lenses. Yeah, lenses on each of those cameras. So it's like a circular
I see.
view.
Well, that would be good for the plaza. For the garden, I think you need more specific. So
okay.
I don't know. I just know that there's cameras being installed all over the city, and
Okay.
yet Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza.
Thank you, Ann. I know, again, this is
Pass
public
by.
safety. I will talk to public safety about cameras. We do have a couple other questions, and thank you. There's a lot of questions that are starting to come in. I promise that we will address every one of them, but we might not get to it right away. I did want to acknowledge again, Elisa DeVito. She has a question, I believe, well, a couple. First, what is included in the request for Ralph Bunch redesign? We'll get into that. Oh, other than the blue stone repair, there is no existing access to water to our knowledge. Many plants dried up and were removed in advance of the UN General Assembly meeting. Lisa, I'd be happy to float that tonight to add. Alex, is that true? The only thing we have for Ralph Bunch right now is the Bluestone request?
Let me see.
Thanks. As I'm looking through more. Yeah. And then Elisa, I think referring back to Stuyvesant Square Park, or Stuyvesant Square, no irrigation other than volunteers connecting hoses and filling watering cans. I'm aware of that, not just at that park, but elsewhere. So yes, we can discuss that as well. Did you find Ralph Bunch?
I'm at Ralph Bunch. Let's see. Yep, this is the request. I think you're talking
Just the
about.
Bluestone. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, hate to put you on the spot. Elisa, if we want to give Elisa the floor, I'd be happy to have her talk more about this, since I'm certainly not opposed to proposing that irrigation should be part of the budget requests. Again, water is needed at Ralph Bunch for sure, especially I think as more of the scaffolding comes down and the shade disappears. Elisa, do you want the floor? You can give me a thumbs up or a note in Q&A. If not, we can do it.
I've just unmuted. Thank you so much. Yeah, Ralph Bunch, the scaffolding is down in the area that's properly Ralph Bunch. But with that came down, lots of trees. So that was also one of the requests we have. And just like Michael Ann mentioned, we did submit 311 requests, and I guess we're just waiting to see what happens with that. But irrigation is obviously an issue there.
Okay. Does anybody on this committee have an issue with adding that for Ralph Bunch to at least for now, the budget requests? Making it sure it's not covered elsewhere. I don't believe it is in parks, so I will be happy if there's no going once, going twice. Elisa, we can put that on. If we can put that on the Airtable, Alex, not necessarily right now, but we'll add that. It's an important area.
Thank you.
Sure.
Kevin, just to be clear, would that be added to the the blurb of this existing request?
I think it would be more beneficial, and I would think, again, someone, Marty, maybe could request, tell me if I'm wrong, that if we put those in together as the same request with the Bluestone, probably more of a chance to get it all done. Yes?
Actually, having the two separate would make sense, because it's going to be,
Baking it into, okay.
yeah, because it's going to be a separate contract.
Okay, let's do that. Thanks. I appreciate your knowledge on that. So yes, we'll make it two separate requests unless there's any objection. Thank you, Marty.
So yeah, if it's going to be a separate request, then we could talk about, you know, we would need somebody to also help write up the blurb as well.
Okay. Hey, a couple questions from Larry Shire. One is budget request. Does it include restoration of Stuyvesant Square fountains? Great question. And the second question is security cameras for Stuyvesant Cove Park. Will they basically be coming in after ESCR project is done? And again, it looks like this is going to the Public Safety Committee on anything security camera related. But what do we have on Stuyvesant Square fountains? What do we have in the Airtable now?
I don't know if we have anything right now for fountains.
We don't.
Okay. Phyllis, are you still on? You want to jump on for a second? And I know this is going to take long. By the way, we're going to waive when one of our discussions about open space, just because I know this is taking a little time, although I think it's important. Phyllis, if you're there.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Can you weigh in on that? Your feelings? On the fountain?
The West Fountain, we just got the fountain going again and everything seems to be okay. The East Fountain, of course, will not be going for years because we need the electricity over there. So, you know, there's priorities and there's only so much money. I'm not aware. Yeah, sure. The fountains probably could use restoration. But right now, there's other priorities in the park, mainly to get the electricity restored. And that park house project is, I guess, about $3 million. So at some point, I guess we'd have to have the fountains restored. But right now, the priority is to get the power going again.
Okay. Larry, if you want to give any further comment on that, now that you've heard Phyllis's input, I'd be happy to give you the floor if you'd like, but it sounds like that's not necessarily the top priority for the park at this time. Okay, Ann Seligman, this is sort of a parks question from before, so I'm just sorry, I'm just catching up to it possibly, but Ann asked, the pool at the rec center has been closed for months. What's the status of funding to reopen it? Can it be added to item 4? Again, that's the Motley Recreation Center.
No, that's a leaving.
It says Constant Baker Motley in here,
Really?
rec center. So but no, my kids were there yesterday. It's Astros, the pool's definitely open. I think this.
Isn't the kiddie pool there closed?
Oh, maybe.
No, they're talking about the rec center. They're talking
Definitely
about
talking about the rec center.
the Motley. They are talking about it. I'll ask Ken.
The pool at Motley is closed?
I believe it's been down for a while.
All right, we'll have to look into that.
Okay, Ann, we're going to follow up on that, making sure, and it looks like Parks is already on it. Thank you. Let's go back to questions. Somebody, Peter asked, will there be time during the meeting to ask questions to the panel? Yes. If it's just about the panel, all the new business would be your best slot for that toward the end. And then we have some questions about pickleball, which we're going to get to in a second. Catherine Hedden, thank you for being aboard. I did see your message. Let's see, anything else? Michael Ann, yes. Tree bed expansion, we'll get that as our follow-up to the Parks Department. They did say they will be open ears. We can follow up with them together offline. Okay, yeah, another pickleball question. So we'll get into that. Why don't we get into that now? A lot of you know that St. Barton Park has become a pickleball hub. I guess I should say once again, for full disclosure, that I am the volunteer founder of the 501c3 nonprofit called the St. Barton Park Conservancy. I recently decided to donate to the park's pickleball community a secure storage chest for sports equipment to place near the handball and pickleball courts. This will be a benefit to the community in part because nets need to be transported to the court for each playing session. This includes some players, including someone I know in her 80s, who has a net and finds it hard to carry that storage bag to the courts for play each day. I know they asked to be here tonight. I see at least 4 of them from the pickleball community. They had a capital request that first was written. They wrote when Councilmember Powers asked for capital requests for his district. The group's leaders wrote the following. Over 250 pickleball players in our community are requesting adequate pickleball courts for the fastest growing sport in the nation. Pickleball is built on equality, inclusion, mental health, and mental well-being, just to name a few benefits, and it is for all ages. By improving the courts, we will be able to participate in citywide tournaments and bring more funding to the new plans for St. Barton Park. One more paragraph. As a start, we need to renovate the 4 pickleball courts we've been using. These renovations would not encroach on the basketball courts and would still allow for tennis and handball. Currently, there are no lights after dark, so we are asking for court lights or, at the very least, more lamp posts. The courts require resurfacing to create regulation size, level, concrete expansion, joint-free playing surfaces, and appropriate lines for both pickleball and handball. Pavement, which is used for the adjacent basketball courts, would be a more appropriate playing surface and an easier way to achieve these goals. I don't think, Steve, I know you're aware that this request exists. Don't know if this is addressed on the parks level, but again, there's also a request into Councilmember Powers' office on this.
Well,
Or Sheena, sorry, Sheena's here too.
I mean, are we saying that that the 4 pickleball courts are within the footprint of one of the handball courts?
That is correct. They do coexist. I've been playing referee, as the pickleball players know. There is a couple handball players that they went one time in the early morning and they couldn't get court time. We have at the Conservancy, there's a gentleman, Charlie Banks, who's wonderful. He has really become our point person for the park for making sure everybody gets along. What I will say about the pickleball community at the park, it's extraordinarily inclusive. If you show up for the first time and say you've never played, they will stop playing, give you a racket and a ball and teach you some skills. It's a wonderful addition to the community. But at this point, it's not.
We would be, I didn't realize you could fit as many as 4 of them into one handball court. I mean, we would be open to, I guess, discussing this further. I mean, there has been some, I think, some friction that we've heard from handball players who feel as though they're now losing space. But it would be helpful to know whether the community board wants us to put the pickleball onto the handball courts. In effect, I mean, let's face it, in effect, it would mean that there would be one less handball court. You can still have the handball lines there, but the reality is there are so many people playing pickleball, you might not be able to play handball there until You know,
I really,
if at all.
yeah. Yeah,
So,
there is a couple people that are passionate. What I'd love to do, Catherine Hedden, I see, is on here. Catherine is actually the lead USA Pickleball ambassador for Manhattan. Thank you for jumping aboard. Catherine, we'll give you the floor if you'd like, because I think, and again, we just need questions mainly, but if you can address how those courts are actually now lined. I mean, they are taped as pickleball courts, and they are in constant use at St. Vartan.
Yes,
So,
I would love that.
Alex, if we can give Catherine Hedden the floor.
Thank you so much. Let me.
Hey, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to the board. I don't know how to get my picture to me. I don't
That's
know how
all
I
right.
can do that. So you'll have to see that. I don't know, you have to see my picture. But anyway, so Mr. Simon, it's a pleasure to have you on this board meeting. I am a representative of the USAP Pickleball, which is a program throughout the country which promotes pickleball everywhere. And I second the woman who was speaking about communication, because as soon as like a month ago, I had emailed you, Susan Donahue, Margaret Nelson. I've met Margaret Nelson down at William Passanante, because what's happening, you made a misstatement just now where you said 4 pickleball on 1 handball. Years ago, I'm going to give you a quick history because I know you're rushed for time, and of course everybody wants money. But years ago, and I'm sorry to see Mr. Castro go, because he has been instrumental in working with the pickleball community throughout Manhattan. And he's been working with me personally to get pickleball courts put in spaces that no one thought they could go. Clinton DeWitt, William Passanante, Albano, everywhere. The St. Vartan group, and now I'm a resident of this community board. So I just recently moved to this area. So I'm now a resident. So what you need to understand, Mr. Simon, is the communication could be a little bit improved with me trying to explain to you how pickleball works in the community. Kevin O'Keefe is exactly right when he says you can't find a more welcoming community. And I play at all of the places, and I've been down to St. Vartan recently. When we went to meetings years ago, we had courts at St. Vartan before they AstroTurf St. Vartan, before they AstroTurf Robert Moses. We had 20 courts that were taken away and with the AstroTurf. And when we went to those board meetings at the time, they said, we'll just play on the handball courts. There are 4 handball courts there. Each one can fit 1 pickleball court. But what's happening throughout the city as pickleball is growing, and it's the fastest growing, you see it on the news, you see it everywhere. The residents of those particular communities, even in Corporal Sarah Valley, are taking it out on the pickleball players. And I know this isn't addressing the fact that we need it resurfaced, but what's also happening, and I've tried to work with the Corporal Sarah Valley as well, because, and the same thing with St. Vartan, is because it's not really, you know, something has to be, it's not us. We're trying to work with the community. We're trying to invite them to play, but yet we want it to be not, we don't want to say, don't play tennis against the wall. So we're trying to work within each other. But because all of these surfaces have not been taken care of, we're getting a lot of injuries now. We're getting people falling on the cracks. And that's what's happening at St. Vartan. At William Passanante, I was down there, 2 people got sprained ankles. So, and because they just need to be resurfaced, because they just haven't been used that much. And I don't know, for handball, maybe they didn't need them. But it's not really, I'm trying to explain to the neighborhood residents of all of these places that it's not the pickleball players that you should be taking it out on, but it's really put pressure on the Parks Department to find us more space, because really now pickleball is equal to basketball, tennis, all the other sports that have so many places to play.
Well, we have, just so you know, and Catherine, I know you because we spent some time there
together. Yes.
when we had that open street, 36th Street between the Tunnel Approach Street and First Avenue for last fall. I know that needs to be leveled in certain things, but we are committed. I think it's safe to say the community is committed to this group. I look at people like Matt Bondi on here. Matt actually had, I think I'm not speaking at school, episode one time when he couldn't work into a pickleball match, but he wanted to play. He came down to St. Vartan and they were open arms.
That's correct. That's correct.
So I just love that attitude. It's the reason, again, that I'm supporting personally the pickleball community with that storage chest. So we just got to find a way of getting those courts surfaced I believe. Again, I'm just one voice on this.
Well, that's basically why I'm here too, because they really do, because now I'm really starting to see a lot of injuries at all the parks, but St. Barton.
One woman who's very good, I think you might know that, she will not come back to St. Barton because she's afraid she's going to get injured again.
Which is true, because I've seen them. I've seen, people sprain their ankles on cracks. And anyway, so that's why, and St. Barton is by far, between that and Central Park Group, the best people I've ever met as far as welcoming. And they also invite everybody on the board to come down and play. And you're right, Kevin, we worked on getting the street, those 2 courts on the street, and I came over and taped them. But at the same time, the street wasn't flat and people were afraid of getting injured. And Mr. Simon, just on a side note, I would really love it if you responded to my emails, because I'm addressing all of these issues when I email you and Margaret Nelson and Mr. Castro, who's the only one that responded to me, and other people in the Parks Department.
I was under the impression that others in the Parks Department were responding to you.
And again, I can work with Charlie Banks. Charlie can pay. Now, again, Charlie's a very passionate, he's retired. He's a very passionate pickleball player, great ambassador. He is going to be, he is the sports chair for the St. Barton Park Conservancy. So that, and I love that, because he's willing not just to help out pickleball, he wants to coexist with basketball and everything else going on there. We can get a better communication flow going. I could play a role, this committee can play a role in making sure that Parks Department is aware. I think this proposal is not asking for a lot. Yes, it's asking for money, but the sport has certainly proven itself. Maybe not a year ago we could say that as much. It certainly is there now.
Thank you, Kevin, so much. I appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Simon and Parks Department and the whole community board.
Thank you for your time. Okay. If no one has any objections to adding that request to our fiscal year 2024 budget requests, I do have the language from what was sent to Keith Powers' office, Council Member Powers' office, and we should do that. Do you have the rest of the meeting to say no? Agenda item number 3. Oh, let's just go look back. And Jeannie, can you help our Vice Chair, Jeannie D'Onofrio, who is a better reader than I, or better eyesight anywhere? Can you, I want to make sure that questions are being answered. And if you feel I've skipped one over, let's not make that happen. I want to make sure everybody has a chance. Having said that, I see Cheryl Arluck is on here. Oh, Cheryl is part of the St. Barton Park pickleball community, wonderful ambassador. She writes 1 pickleball court equals 1 handball court. Yes, we clarified that. Go ahead, Jeannie, sorry.
Sorry. Wait, did you want to go to the next agenda item? Do you still want to go to the questions?
I wanted to make sure that there are no questions hanging for things that we discussed about. I do see Calvin Jones here too, again, just to go to the pickleball comments first. Calvin says that all the board members are welcome to come and play pickleball and avoid the cracks doing so. So everybody's welcome to come St. Barton Park. All right, go ahead, Jeannie, sorry.
Okay, I'm going back into the earlier, okay, because I think we missed one, unless I didn't hear it about the tree, the huge tree branch that fell.
Oh yeah, I can address that. There was a tree branch that fell at St. Barton Park. I'm very aware of that. I don't know if Sheena, you wanted to add anything to either what was done or any mitigation going forward on pruning or taking a better look at branches that might be falling.
Our forestry team was in there last month, and we did a whole full scale of pruning throughout St. Barton's. And then we had them come back in the tire swing area to remove some additional dead limbs. So they were on it. Our supervisors were early on it, but they did a great job at pruning the entire area. They did a full scale. They spent actually 2 days inside St. Barton's.
Okay, Jeannie, if you could read the question, I want to make sure that we're aware of the recent.
Okay, because this goes back a few weeks. I'm not sure it's been handled. A huge tree branch fell on St. Barton's playground a few weeks ago. What is the schedule for inspecting nearby trees after something like that happens? So not just the clearing of it, but the inspection of trees.
We fully inspect the trees once a week. Our supervisors they inspect the trees for dead limbs and loose limbs and anything that they might see out of the ordinary, dead trees. And if they have some real concerns, if they think it's going to be a hazard, they, you know, we're caution off the area and send out our forestry team to inspect. But we did a full scale of that work with the trees last month inside the state wards.
Well, I'm pretty sure that immediately after that incident occurred, our forestry staff, I assume, would have gone into the park and not only removed the fallen limb, but would have also inspected the surrounding trees. I mean, that I think that's part of their standard MO.
Standard, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Speaking of pruning, I did want to go through the Airtable again, and I think, Reshma, you had said at a previous meeting, and sorry, Jeannie, I will get back to you in a second, but before I forget, you had said that we can't necessarily, I'm sorry, maybe it was Alex or Jesus, that we can't necessarily take anything off this Airtable just yet. What's the ruling on that?
No, if you would like to take something off, and then that's a recommendation you give to the budget committee, and we would discuss it and take it off.
Okay. Again, everybody, committee members, you've had this Airtable for a while. This would be your chance to chime in and say if you feel something does not be needed. I also, this is again a privilege to have Steve here. I would love to have his again continued weigh in on these items, maybe one for one. You know, Alex, if you want to read each one, the title and even a summary, we can determine whether it's outdated. I don't like anything right now. This is always the case. It seems Parks has the longest list of budget requests in any other committee. We should feel a little bit more vigilant about taking something off, especially since tonight it seems like we put at least 3 or 4 things on. So can we start again, or we can enlarge this maybe so I can see it better and others? There we go.
May I raise a question about this list?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, just one example, the Murphy Brothers Park Dog Run is on continued support. Looking at, you know, when you blow it up and look at the documentation behind it or the, you know, language, I don't see, unless I'm missing any kind of a date, like, I don't know how old this write-up is. So I know there are some additions added, but I thought that this dog run was well underway and there was not much that we might be able to take this one off the list.
Yeah, thank you, Jeannie. That's such a great deal because we had a presentation on this. I know Steve was at that meeting. We did that where we presented what was happening with the dog run at Murphy's.
Well, it's part of a plan for completely renovating that playground, including the ball fields and the play equipment. And we're actually anticipating that this work will begin this coming fall. So I believe it's an appropriate item as for continued support. This is a project that's being done as part of the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project. It's not being done by Parks. It's being done by DDC, but it is in the pipeline, and it should be. Certainly, I believe it should be in construction by the end of this year.
So would this need to be on the list, therefore, since there's already been an appropriation, it's in the procurement?
Well, you don't need to rank it. You don't have to, but
yeah.
Just leave it on there as a work in progress. I mean,
the usual procedure is, I mean, I can't really tell you what to do, but the usual procedure, which maybe Marty Barrett would confirm, is that a project which is in the pipeline, which is funded, which is gone through the design process, but has not yet been constructed, has not been completed, is something that you would indicate still has continued support. You are
correct.
But I mean, you could.
No, Steve, you're right. You can't tell us what to do, but you already did in a way that you said we can rank it in a certain order where we don't give it.
No, you don't need to rank it because
It's-
you don't need to advocate for it to be funded.
Right.
It is funded. There's no question about that. But it's up to you guys what to do.
Grace,
Okay.
but can you weigh in on the ranking system? I mean, is there a ranking system that's
No, we haven't been, really ranking. What we've been doing in our write-ups is saying, okay, for this committee, these are our 3 top priorities. And then overall, as a community board, when we send in our district need statements, we highlight what our top priorities are, which is usually we choose 3 or 4.
okay? Oh, okay. Thank you. That's what I thought. I'm dipping back into the questions again, making sure that,
I have this, can I ask, this one of the questions, I'm not quite sure if it was answered, Kevin. Again, going back.
are we checking off the ones that are, have been answered? I guess that's a question for Alex.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, if you could. Again, like the Catherine Hedden ones can be checked. Lisa DeVito, if they're ones that have been addressed. Courtney's question about St. Martin's.
The one about from Barbara, the question, again, going back to pickleball,
Mm-hmm.
about the budget for a storage box. Was that addressed? Is there a budget for a storage lock box for nets?
Yeah, I've already addressed that.
Okay, I didn't hear that. Okay.
I'm taking care of it through the Conservancy funds.
Oh, wait a minute, is that the, okay, is that the, okay,
Charlie Banks, again, who is the sports lead for the Conservancy, is aware of that. We've been in touch about painting it this Saturday and a lot of
Okay.
things. So very
All right.
much in the works. Steve is going to weigh in separately on, I want to make sure that we're covered insurance wise. So I may have to get some general liability insurance for that area of the park because of that addition. But that's something that Parks Department is going to let us know about. If it's delayed, it's just because I want to make sure that we're not, held liable for anything that happens with that donation.
I don't see any other questions that have not been addressed yet. Let me see. If anybody else on the committee sees something, I don't.
I thought there was one from, okay, I don't know. Okay, they're being checked off.
I did,
If I can mention on number 2, we need money for the windows, but not for the HVAC at Asalevi. The HVAC is fully funded.
Yes, I thought we took this off at a previous meeting, the HVAC. We had it, I know this, we had this discussion.
Yeah, it was at a previous meeting. I recall it was the March meeting. The committee had discussed moving this item to continued support. But yeah, I was also going to ask whether there are parts of this that still aren't funded.
Yeah, the windows are not funded. As you know, we'd also like to renovate the dance studio in the locker rooms if you want to add those 2 items. But the HVAC is proceeding along. We should be at this point completing the design work on the HVAC project.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jeannie, we can wait a little bit longer for the questions unless there's something that's specifically about.
yeah,
budget
there
requests.
are a few more that came up.
But are they specifically about budget requests? Because we can wait. on them. Okay, let's wait on them because I want to make sure we get through this.
There's a lot
especially-
of questions, but not specifically about it.
Okay, we can wait for those
Okay.
for all the new business. Can we go, Alex, back and go through this, item by item? If you want to read the title off, New Park and Community District 6. This is something that clearly needs to stay on. This is something that has been percolating. So that's fine. We'll keep that. Next.
I'm sorry, Kevin, is that decided at 34th Street?
That's what I was thinking, exactly what you and I have discussed about 34th Street. Yes.
So for this item, did you want to keep it?
Don't want to keep the HVAC, but do want to keep the windows.
Okay.
Kevin, might I suggest for that item, maybe we split it up, let the HVAC be continued support since that part is funded, and then the windows can be a separate item. And then I think Steve was mentioning something about the dance studio that can be lumped in there. That way it's easier from a record keeping standpoint.
And Jesus, if you could also include the locker rooms.
All right, that's for the committee to decide, but yeah, there's
Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jesus. I appreciate that. Looking at the big picture, yes, we should do locker rooms and address that as well as the dance studio.
The locker rooms are in there already in the.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay.
And we had it last year in the.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So Alex, to be clear, what we're going to do is we'll leave it for now, but we're going to take this and split the requests up so that the HVAC is one request, and then the windows, locker room, dance studio, what have you, will be a new request that will be ranked for funding.
And to be clear, the HVAC is continuing support.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
It is funded.
Funded, and yes, what he was saying before is accurate. Once that project is done, then typically the board takes it off, but until it's actually done, the board tends to like to leave it on, continuing support.
Okay, understood. Let's go to the next item, please. We've addressed this. This is Ralph Bunch. This is what Elisa DeVito was referencing as well, as far as the need for water source. This is this I can't tell you much about. Steve, locker room elevator at Motley?
It's if you can keep it on your list.
Steve, would you say that the blurb is accurate as it needs to be, or it's always seemed a little nebulous to me?
I can't really read it very well.
I'll read it out loud. We have been alerted that elevators at Constance Baker Motley Recreation Center need to be renovated and that locker rooms are in need of repair and updating. We are supportive of our recreation centers, and among the repairs and renovations, we would like to see any improvements that might allow faster reopening of all or part of the facility if there is a future pandemic or required.
Well, I don't really know how to respond to that last part. I don't think these, that's a more generalized question that involves city policy maybe, but and I don't think these particular repairs would weigh in on that. But I need to get back to you about the condition of the elevator. I'm not sure whether or not we've since addressed that.
Steve, how soon do you think you can get a circle back on that?
By the end of the week.
Great.
And also, I guess I need to get back to you about the condition of the pool.
Steve?
Well, here we go. Bobby, thank you for joining us. Bobby is on board, who's the manager of the Judge Constance Baker Motley Recreation Center.
I was getting ready to I just reached out to someone. Go ahead.
Bobby just wrote saying, not just at 7:56, construction is wrapping up on Constance Baker Motley Pool this week.
Oh.
Okay. Thank you, Bobby. Or thank you, Parks, but thank you for the message.
Can Bobby speak to the elevator and the locker rooms? What's going on there?
Bobby can always speak. Bobby, let's give Bobby the floor.
Yeah, that's always been because we've been trying to get information on that, but it's been elusive.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, good morning. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So the elevator is working, so you can take that off your list. I knew of probably about 2-3 years ago there was a long issue with the elevator being down, but it's since been fixed, so there's no problem with the elevator.
But Bobby, don't we still need to renovate the locker rooms?
The locker rooms, yes. So the locker rooms do need renovation, so you can keep that on the list, but the elevators can be taken off.
And when you say, you mean all of them, like men and women's?
Yes, both men's and women's.
Okay, then we can adapt the blurb here to reflect the new information that we received tonight.
Thank you, Bobby.
My pleasure, guys.
Got a new pool, you got fixed elevators. That's where I want to live. All right, next. Peters Field. Here we go. I'd be happy to address this, but I think, again, Steve.
Given that Steve is approaching the screen, maybe we should read it out loud. I think he's having a...
Located adjacent to MS 104 and regularly used by many students and community residents, Peters Field has long been in need of an upgrade. CB6 has received various complaints that the facility is not up to standard and as such decreases the enjoyment of the space, especially the basketball courts, and delivers a perception that the community is a victim of urban blight. By the way, I wrote this, so if you don't like it, I complain. The upgrade should be anchored by leveling and repainting the damaged, uneven, and potentially unsafe court surface. Peters Field is home to the only NYC Parks basketball facility in the district that has rims that do not allow nets. So regulation basketball rims, backboards, stanchions, and nets should be installed.
All right, well, Kevin, I would argue that this goes, I think you went a little too far here. I mean, the fact is we did recently upgrade most of the site.
This was written a year ago, Steve. Just so you know. This was
Okay,
worked over.
well, maybe you want to,
We need to update it, yes.
yeah, maybe you need to update it a little. I can understand why you might want to focus on the basketball courts, but the site as a whole, I believe, looks significantly different than it did a year or two ago, and it has a brand new synthetic turf field. But by the way, somebody earlier kept on referring to AstroTurf. We don't use AstroTurf,
Right.
but so I mean, it's certainly been upgraded. I don't believe it represents urban blight. And
No, the basketball, the empty nets, the
all right.
rims that do not allow for nets. That was the reference there.
Yeah, all right, well, okay, but I think that's a little it's a little overboard, maybe. But
All right, like I said, I appreciate it. But it is.
I did have somebody take a look at redoing the basketball courts, and I have to go back and check on that. We were looking at one point to maybe reconfiguring the courts. I think I even discussed it with you, putting in a full-size court. That didn't work. That apparently did not pan out. I mean, I would agree with you that we need to resurface the basketball courts. So it's a legitimate item, but the rationale is somewhat strong.
It is. And again, that was a year ago, I felt that the basketball situation and mainly the urban blight, again, reference was to the fact that they're the type of rims that you don't put nets on and they're associated with.
Let me
we'll
tell
clean
you
that up. I will clean that up and make it more
the
relevant.
vast majority of our basketball hoops in New York City parks do not have nets. And when you put nets on them, our experience is that they don't last very long.
Well, I can, as you may know, I can do the research. I put a net up with a friend of mine, every basketball court in the district that's outdoors and public. And it lasts, it usually lasts about 4 months and then we redo it. But I will, we'll rewrite this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go next.
Sorry, one sec.
Okay. No worries. If you want, I can dip in and see how we're doing on the questions. I don't know what this is in reference to. If somebody could help me out. Valerie Beal writes, has the Parks Department given permission to a private organization to bully their staff? I hope this is not the situation, as it is a totally unacceptable situation abusing these hardworking people. If anybody can shed light on what that's in reference to, I would appreciate it.
I'm sorry, have we hired an outside organization to bully our staff?
I will read it again. Valerie Beal writes, has the Parks Department given permission to a private organization to bully their staff? Question mark.
No.
I hope this is not
I
the
think-
situation, as it is totally unacceptable situation abusing these hardworking people.
No, why would we do that to our staff?
I don't understand that question. I'm sorry. But you have, we've amplified your voice nonetheless. Okay, we're up with additional PEP officers. Can we blow that description up? Park Enforcement Patrol officer presence reduces illegal or inappropriate behavior and increases the opportunity for peaceful and safe enjoyment of the parks by both children and adults. CB6 would like more frequent patrols in our district. Current levels of roving enforcement are not sufficient to address quality of life issues in our parks, which appear to have ramped up during the pandemic. More fixed patrols are needed. In this vein, we support funding of 1 additional sergeant and 3 additional PEP officers for Manhattan South. If additional officers are not possible at this time, we urge that the current level of staffing continue and that the Department of Parks consider patrol routes to address changing needs.
Well, I think the last sentence is probably what our current policy is. They are usually on routes, and they are responding to changing needs, to conditions as they arise. But certainly we would support any request for additional PEP officers. We find them to be, as you do, very valuable.
Okay, great. Next. Unless, again, if somebody feels that they want to take this off, we're going to keep the ones as they read. Hire more staff for parks in CD6. Manhattan Community District 6 needs, there we go, thank you, needs staffing at parks such as a dedicated district gardener, city parks workers, and additional welders. Current levels of maintenance and operations staff are not adequate to maintain our parks. Our landscaping suffers from lack of gardening and accessibility. Also, non-government funding, i.e. conservancies, is not available for any parks in our district. I can tell you that's not true. The pandemic has resulted in an increase in parks usage, and as a district lacking park space, maintaining what little we have to do is crucial. We were pleased to see the executive budget for 2022 included money for 10,000 new hires for the City Cleanup Corps. We hope that the budget will protect this program throughout 2022 and 2023 fiscal years.
Well, with respect to the last suggestion there, the City Cleanup Corps, although it was expanded to be almost basically year-round, was really a seasonal program. And what we have now in the new budget, the FY23 budget, we did receive funding for more year-round staff. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's a significant increase to our budget. And it certainly puts us, it's a major step in the right direction. I don't know whether or not we need welders. That's a sort of an unusual request among all of our tradespeople. Sheena, where are we on having a district gardener?
If I could jump in there, Steve, just so you know, the third request from DAG Plaza Friends of was to, since Maria Gardner has been promoted and that position, as I believe now, has not been filled, They have requested a gardener as well, and I know a lot of other
Yeah.
people in the district, including St.
Yes.
Paul.
Well, Maria will be return.
Go ahead, Sheena.
Maria will be returning next week from her seasonal position that she took on this summer. So her line has ended. So we'll have her back in the district starting next
gardener.
Monday.
Yeah, as a guard, yeah. Yeah.
As a gardener, yes.
Wow, that's great.
And for the most part, I think the problem we've had with gardeners is an inability to find people to hire. I don't know if it's been a funding issue. I'd have to double check, but I think we've had to have difficulty finding people to interview and hire. But
You're correct about that, Steve. It's very difficult to find
right
gardeners.
Well, I think I speak for a lot of people, including people like Phyllis and Ann Hirsch, that because they've been requesting and they've been missing the work that Maria's.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. No, the gardeners are essential. We can't operate a decent parks department without having good gardeners.
1000% agree. Next. Baseline current library funding. That's a little too small for my taste. If we can blow that up. There we go. In previous years, we've asked for additional electronic assets for libraries and staffing increases. The city did respond with some additional funding. And the branches in our district have told us they do not need an increase at this time, even to make internal renovations for social distancing. However, the funding has not been baselined in the budget, making reliance on future amounts precarious. We asked that the budget for NYPL and particularly for the branches in our district be baselined and then increased to address upgrades to resources when budgets allow. Not a parks issue, but a cultural affairs issue, which is part of this committee's scope. Comments, anyone? Okay, let's leave that. I am going to address an old and new business, the library. Let me just jump there now, actually. Just want everybody to know that last month, the NYPL system again confirmed the sad news that its Grand Central Library branch will close. As this committee has noted on multiple occasions, this remains a huge loss to many, starting with those who have loved and benefited from its services, from its books to its cooling center. As our Vice Chair, Jeannie, reported in the April meeting about her discussion on this matter, her discussion was directly with NYPL Chief Tony Marks. Jeannie, looking at notes from that meeting, Jeannie spoke, she said, with 2 library branches within 10 blocks from each other, that's much better than some other districts. Tony said in order to keep the 3rd library open, he would literally have to pull resources from other poorer, in quotation, neighborhoods, poor as he put it, to do that. He says, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. 8 full-time staff in Grand Central who will continue to do amazing work throughout the New York Public Library system will keep their jobs. The last thing he wants is to close the library branch. He just doesn't have the resources to keep the 3rd library branch open. I want to point out, Jeannie, thank you for the valuable role that you've constantly filled for this matter. Now, at the April meeting, there were no takers when I instructed the committee members that if anybody wishes to present a resolution or anything else, this would be the time to do it. However, the CB6 chair asked at the most recent executive committee meeting that I bring this up again to see if anybody wanted to make a motion to try to get another branch in the district. At this time, we do not have any research on where that building would go, but I will tell you this committee is committed to doing that research with the Land Use and Waterfront Committee for our current and future generations. That said, if you feel there is any motion needed before we sign off tonight, please do so before then. Something to think about. Let's jump back to the, unless there's comments about the library, now or later. Let's jump back to the next item on the request. And it is Murphy Brothers Comfort Station. I think this falls in the same line, continued support that the dog run does at Murphy's. If no disagreements, let's go to the next one. Is it the repair fountains in Glick Park?
Yep, it's repair fountains in Glick Park.
Okay. I do not know the status of this. Steve, do you know?
I'm sorry, which,
The status, this is,
in Glick Park.
I hate calling it Glick Park, though.
Oh, yeah.
East River Esplanade.
Right, yeah, actually, you guys are the ones who got me to stop calling it Glick Park.
I just want, can we change that, please? I'm back to old habits.
I actually went back and told people in the Parks Department to strike it from our records.
Yeah, and then you should. Thank you. And also, I know that you got the new signage to reflect the real name. Thank you.
Right. Actually, I think that might be Marty Barrett who pushed that on us, who convinced us to do that.
I believe you're right.
Long time coming.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
We don't need some corporate name. Sorry, I won't say anymore.
Right. I think I don't know that this is a continued support item. I don't think that, I don't know that we I don't know that we concluded that we were able to repair those fountains. I better get back to you on this one.
Okay.
I mean, we are doing substantial work in that,
bulkhead work, right?
In that park, but I don't know that it includes the fountains.
It's the bulkhead work that's being.
Yes, exactly, yes.
Okay. Next.
This is the one that we were speaking about earlier.
Okay, yep. Can we go on? And in Bellevue Park South, ground has been broken on that redesign.
Yes, yeah, this is now in construction.
Okay. So we need to reclassify that. I'm sorry, what's the classification?
No, you could keep.
Continue support, that's fine.
Yeah.
Dog run, we've addressed.
It's not just the dog run, it's the entire playground.
Right, that's being redone, including the comfort stations.
Yeah, well, the comfort station is a brand new, there was never a comfort station there before.
True.
That's a brand new component element of the park.
Very important, especially on baseball and softball weekend soccer. There's only, 2 porta potties that are used for both parks. Con Ed, I know that's not Parks Department, but there's a huge squeeze for use of, that's a huge plus.
Right.
Kevin?
Yes.
If this is the end of the list, I don't see any reference to Vincent Albano.
This is interesting, and Steve certainly knows the history going back to Robert Moses. That is still MTA controlled space, semi-controlled space.
Yes.
So,
however, if you give me a moment,
Robert Moses tried to build a freeway through 36th Street from the left side of Manhattan, I should say the west side to the east side. So because they were going to use the part of that acreage for the freeway, that's why they still have a
All right,
hold.
so it took us a long time, and I believe it also took the intervention of Councilmember Rivera, but we finally got the MTA to agree that we could renovate that playground. So we had to update the design documents, and we just recently concluded that it is now undergoing a legal review prior to the bidding process. So this I don't know if you have a limit on the number of projects you can list for continued support, but this one would also qualify. It's fully funded. We got some additional money, in fact, from Councilmember Rivera. And this project is moving ahead and hopefully will be in construction next year, assuming that we get an acceptable bid.
Great. Reshma, do you want to weigh in? And thank you, Sheena, for bringing that up. Do you want to weigh in on whether something is considered having too many continued support items?
No, I think we can add it. I mean, we're at, I think in total, about 52 request items right now. And we tried to keep it around that. We used to have many more, and we've tried to keep it in the 50 range. So with this, we might, with a couple of additions we have there, I'm thinking we're going to end up with 55, but I think that should be fine. Especially given that there's so many more, we used to have a lot more under capital, and a lot of things have moved to continue support.
Okay. Thank you.
Now I hate to.
Is that the, I'm sorry. Sorry, Steve. Go ahead.
I hate to bring up St. Varden Park. I know that could be a problem for you, Kevin. But as an expense item, we would like to reintroduce youth programming to the Park House, and we are working on a plan, and I'm hoping to provide some more details to you in the very near future. But it would be helpful, perhaps, if you could list as an expense item providing staff funding recreational staff for a youth program at the St. Varden Park House.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. Just so you know, it's that lies within Land Use and Waterfront Committee chaired by Sandy McKee. So much so that the Park House, I believe that's out now, probably officially, is on Sandy's agenda for their meeting later this month.
I'm talking about St. Varden Park.
Yes, but it was considered a land use. I wanted it in parks. By the way, there's no conflict. Just so everybody knows, my work is voluntary. As founder and executive director of the Conservancy, I spoke with the Ethics and Conflict of Interest Board. They're fine with what I'm doing. I just have to recuse myself for any votes. Actually, they said I don't have to recuse myself, but I'll do it anyway. But having said that, it was decided by the CB6 chair that should be a land use. Having said that, I plan on being at that meeting and seeing where they go with that, because I think that should be. And I know I'm very familiar with the programs that you're doing. I know I saw Bobby out there and what you're doing with even like the City Foundation puppet performances. Wake Up Daisy was good, and some of the other things, the water events on the turf. But I would have to talk to the Land Use Committee on what its plans are for that.
Okay.
Having said that, thank you. Wonderful that you're thinking in that direction. All right. We could pencil it in, Steve. I don't mind that. It's just that I'm not chair of CB6, so not my call about what committee it should lie in.
All right. I was hoping you could use a Sharpie.
I can use a Sharpie, but I don't want to outkick my coverage on what I'm allowed to do within Community Board 6. I like playing in the rules. So if the chair of CB6 allows us to put it on there, I'd be happy to put it on there. Or maybe it goes through the budget request from the Land Use and Waterfront Committee. All right. And then I'll get a what are they called? I'll get a stone cutter to put it in the requests. All right. Awkward silence. Are we good on this, Steve?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. The only other thing I should mention to you is that we are going to proceed with the renovation of Augustus St. Gordon's playground.
Oh,
this was a project.
3.9 million, right?
Yeah, we got a substantial allocation through Councilmember Rivera, and And we are going to be hopefully working with you and others to have what we call a community input meeting, hopefully by the end of the year, to kick off the design process for that project.
Thank you for that. I was going to mention that in all the new business, but thank you for mentioning that. It was a huge win. I did see the council member recently during her campaign, and we had a little toast about that. That's such huge. And I know, Sheena, that the staff there, I know there are puddle issues and many other things at St. Gaudens. Such a huge, and the basketball places, the facilities in bad shape. Thank you. Okay, let's go on to our next agenda item. And that would be the chair's report. Let me just make sure, actually, Jeannie, you keeping me honest on any questions that need to be?
Not related to the budget?
Yes, now we can go on. I think it's safe to say, hold on. Let's hold on for a second. I did mention, we're going to kind of waive this. Agenda item 3 is report on opportunities for new publicly accessible green space in the district. I think we've talked about this enough, but whether it's to gain more access to park space or more access to other city land or privately owned public space, POPs, we need to find more. But I will table this agenda until next month, as we are in continued collaboration with multiple parties, including the aforementioned Land Use Committee, on a fully strategic and collaborative approach to more accessible space in the district. We've talked about many of them in committee and with representatives of many of them. It's safe to say that we continue to gain ground, pun intended. Jeannie, go ahead with any questions.
Okay, and there are hands raised as well, so
let's do this. Any committee members with hands raised, or
Anton has
I
his hand
see it.
raised.
Let's do this. Let's Ann Seligman, you have the floor. If we can give Ann the floor. Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm disappointed about the closure of the Grand Central Library branch. I am more upset about the way the library has handled it, which I think is like disingenuous is the kindest word I can put on it. And one of the things that I had been thinking about was the library as a community space. And I know that's something that this committee has been concerned about. And the idea that like that space is going to be empty in the beginning of December, and there's a lot of empty space in East Midtown. And maybe it's, worth talking about that lease. And I think also, I know nobody is really interested in writing a reso. I'd be happy to write a reso sort of condemning the way they've acted. I am not part of this committee, so I'm not sure that's a legit thing to even offer. But I have been a lifelong supporter, emotionally, financially, whatever, of the New York Public Library. And I have just lost complete respect for, not because they were closing the library, which might be a completely reasonable thing to do, but in the way that they handled it, and that they remain completely non-transparent about what the decision-making process was. And in fact, they made this process a year ago and have still not really announced it publicly. So I one of the things that I was thinking is that if we do as a community board want to talk about having some kind of other community center, maybe we want to be on record as saying, hey, here was here was something that was kind of a local, resource, and now is not gonna be. And so that highlights, kind of the need for it. So
Thank you.
anyway, those are just some thoughts.
Thank you, as always, Ann. I think the way I look at it, and Jeannie, again, put a lot of time and effort into this, and we've talked a lot about it. I think, the play is the future. I think, to dwell on the past, I mean, the decision is made. We know the reasons for the
I
decision.
completely agree. You know what, Kevin, the decision was made a year ago. Like literally, the
And
decision was announced.
They didn't tell patrons.
internally. They still have not told patrons.
I thought they did tell patrons last week.
Patrons, when they say patrons, they are talking about a level of funders. They are not talking about users of the library. Because like literally, I'm somebody, that's my default library. I have still not been notified that it's closing.
Well,
they will put a notice up the week before, and that's fine. Like I said, my concern is, how do we move forward? I completely agree. We want to talk about the future, and sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I think I interrupted you, actually. Yeah, and I think the future is what it's about. And as I mentioned earlier, I think the research needs to be done for us to put together, let's say, and again, I as chair can't make a motion on a reso. If anybody else does, I'd be happy to listen to it. But from committee member, that is, we don't know where, like, if there was to be a new library in the district, where would it go? I think if we did a resolution, it needed to be taken seriously. We need to have done the research about what is the availability. I mean, there's a lot of due diligence that has to go into this. We need to be taken seriously that we've done our work. Just to have an idea is
Right,
not good
and
enough.
I'm not even talking
It's
about
not good enough just to have an
another
idea. Anybody can
library.
have an idea, but it's about the execution and the research and everything else.
Right, and I completely agree. And in order to do that due diligence, it would be super helpful if they would share with us the information about like the usage numbers and all that. But I'm not even talking about a new library. What I'm trying to build on is the idea that I've heard talked about in committee meetings, which is, hey, is there a way to get some kind of sort of community center for the neighborhood? Not necessarily a library, but just like what, I mean, you guys, you all know, Marty, I see you nodding, like you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think it's just about an approach. There's and I'm not suggesting you're saying otherwise, but there's a diplomatic approach. I mean, the fact is, Jeannie spoke directly with the head of the library system. I mean, you can't do anything, more high level than that, and had a very transparent, very deep conversation about this. So, and I
It was
agree.
not transparent.
Well,
I'm
it was
sorry.
transparent to the fact that he did admit that that they were going to close it. That's my reference.
I just want to be on record that he did not say a year ago that they knew they were going to close. When I spoke to him, I don't know how many months ago, it was still under consideration. They were trying to
Yes.
find a way. So it wasn't.
But Jeannie,
Okay.
it had been announced within the library last November.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
But I mean, that's
see-
why I'm just saying.
Was it an announcement or
disingenuous.
was there an assumption? Was there a memo? I mean, I don't know.
It was a meeting at the library.
Okay. I do see two hands raised. If I can do this, Anton and Reshma, if either of you can want to address if your questions about the library or comment, please, you have the floor.
My comment is not about the library. If Reshma has comment about the library, I cede the floor to her.
And then I'll go to you. Thank you.
I think on Anton, I put it in the chat, but we do have a request that's not from Parks. It's in our larger budget request, and it's in the Airtable in our community needs statement that we want more municipal facilities in CB6, in particular, a community center where we can meet as well as other community groups can meet. So that's there, Ann.
Reshma, that's perfect. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I'd like to add that, while it's sad that this library is being closed, the city did, because we have been requesting more funding for library, and library funding did increase by, I think, almost 0.5% or something like that. So it did increase.
Yeah, I just wish they'd give us the usage numbers and like some of the what were the costs involved? Like they just were in no way transparent about it. And they weren't even saying when they were going to make the decision. Like it's just, I've just lost respect, I know how these things work. They could have just said a year ago, I'm only surprised that they didn't wait until Thanksgiving, the week before closure. And like I said, I still have not been alerted, like as a donor, that it's closed because I don't
That
get
I
my-
was unaware of. I heard the word donors were notified, and thank you for describing. what-
Patron is a word that can be used in many ways.
Yeah, I see that. Anton, you have the floor.
Thank you. Maybe something very unusual. There is a green space behind One Sutton Place South. And I always thought that was called Sutton Place Park. I was there a few weeks ago and some vagrants were setting up house in that park. And so I decided to call 311 and I was told very specifically, there is no park there. I'm a little confused until I went to Google Maps, and Google Maps does not have a park there. It has a Sutton Place Park down on 53rd and 54th Street, but nothing behind Sutton Place, One Sutton Place South, which has, I don't know if anybody's been there, has the Boer statue and a little connection between 56th and 57th Street, which a lot of kids and nannies use during the day and dog walkers in the evening. Is that a New York City park or is that a private park?
That's a New York City park. We worked awfully hard to create that park or
then maybe somebody ought to get to Google and tell them there's a park there. I have the map open now and there's nothing there.
Well, it was, we went through somewhat of a struggle to build that park and to regain the use of that land. There's a huge story involved with with that piece of property, and that is New York City parkland.
Okay, the reason, I saw the woman at 311 had a very difficult time. She said, I'll contact the 17th precinct to send somebody over there. She sent the patrol people to the wrong park.
We're closing.
Well, let me say, it is a little bit complicated because there are, let's say, 6 different components of Sutton Place Park. And, there's, we have a piece at 53rd, at 55th, at 56th, at 57th, at 58th Street, and we have this connector between 56th and 57th Streets. But I will have somebody reach out to 311 and see if we can.
Right, yeah, because it is a beautiful little green area between 56th and 57th. I practically go out there every evening to enjoy the breeze.
Yes, and it offers great views of the river, and I think it's a very special place. I'm very happy with the way it turned out.
Thank you, Anton. That's good intel, and I know where I'm going to be walking tomorrow. Marty, you had your hand up and then it's down. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, a little bit of the history of that. The area between 56th and 57th Street being developed together was because of CB6 and specifically because of Gary Papish, the longtime chair of this committee, who found the lease and found what was the history before this when they were building the FDR Drive, and they gave Sutton building the right to have the area behind the building, which for $1 a year, for 30, it was for about 30 years. And they stopped paying in 1962 when their lease was up, but they still retained possession until CB6 looked into it and started the lawsuits, etc., that then allowed the city to take back 3/4 or 4/5 of that area and allow just the fenced in area right behind the building for the building's use. And and hence the construction happened and they were connected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Always learn a lot.
Us old timers.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that. Senior Letty Simon, you have the floor.
And just to add to what Marty said, about 6 or 7 years ago, the Sutton Place Parks Conservancy was formed, and it does its best to upkeep and supplement and work with the city on those parks on 54th, 55th, 56th, 57th, and 58th Street. And we appreciate everything that the Parks Department does, and thank you for that.
That conservancy is totally rocking it. I don't know if anybody's been up there and seen it. Matt Bondi had me up there, I guess over a year ago, and introduced me, and they do an unbelievable job. Thank you, Letty. I do have a couple of questions here. I want to make sure they're answered. Faye has a question or statement about Stuyvesant Square Park. The East Park lawn, in quotations, has been destroyed by children from nearby high school. They are turned loose at midday and climb over the fence. We need passive use, signage, and enforcement. Can parks, SPNA, and gardening volunteers set up a meeting with the principal to enlist his cooperation in keeping the students out of that area? We're not talking about the Friends School, are we? What are we talking about? Well, there's the statement. Phyllis, the things have been addressed. Cheryl has been addressed. Michael Ann wants to know, St. Farton Park Garden needs irrigation plan in the budget? Yes, it does. The Conservancy is already fundraising for that effort if no one else steps in with the need, the money. Michael Ann also writes, when are the wooden tree guards coming down, suffocating our trees and killing them? Peter writes, since you have a lot of comments, I'll just write this question as I am speaking on behalf of several others on the call. We are interested in having a discussion about the rules on Peters Field regarding dogs. We are looking to understand the proper course of action required to properly address the council and make our case for proposing a potential change to the rules. I assume this means they're trying to get dogs on as opposed to having no pets. Parks Department, any comment for Peter?
We don't allow dogs on any of our athletic fields. It's not an appropriate use.
Okay. The pickleball question about the storage lockbox has been answered. Barbara, Phyllis says, are you going to add the Stuyvesant Capital Project to the 2024 budget? Yes, I guess we didn't officially do that, did we?
Well, at Stuyvesant, we really have more than one capital project that's needed. Not only do we have this issue with the electrical work in the East Park, we have 2 park houses that are in desperate need of renovation. And, they're both fairly expensive maybe, but I would love to see them on your list as well.
Okay, I'd like to put them on as well. Can we give Phyllis the floor one more time if she's here, please? Phyllis, if you can just want to see what you're talking about. I think that was nice that Steve offered. I certainly support suggesting to the committee that be put on for the park houses. Is that what
Okay.
you were referencing?
Yeah, because the park house in the East Park is part of the electrical situation, isn't it, Steve? Because Is-
Yes, it is.
it's all connected.
Yeah, it
Uh,
is connected.
Okay, so
I'm-
when
I'm hoping we
when-
can still do something about it, about the electrical lines before having to completely renovate the park house. I would hate to think that it's completely reliant upon that. But there is a, you're correct, there is a connection between them.
Yeah, so, Steve mentioned putting that in the 2024 budget, so I just was making sure that was gonna happen when we were going through the budget requests there. And then the West Park, of course, needs a renovation also. But I guess each one of them is gonna cost between 2.5 and 3 million. And you seem to think, Steve, that they wouldn't both be put in 1 year. That one would have to be put in 1 year and another would have to be put in another year. You
Well-
had originally said that
You're talking The
you
park
had
houses,
originally
you're
s-
saying?
the park houses.
Yeah.
Steve, you had originally said that you were going to try and get the West Park, which was the first one that had had a problem in the 2023 budget, but I guess
I know.
that didn't happen.
No, that didn't pan out. So I think I'm now focused on doing the one on the east side. And,
Yeah.
And I think in part it's because of this electrical issue. But
Right.
but I think
I'd like to add the East Park, and I know that there was talk in the past about some private funds. Somebody had flirted about putting a coffee shop in there and potentially putting up some capital dollars. And
oh God,
I understand that
Well,
that ship has sailed. I don't think that's happening anymore.
Right.
that goes back about 20 years or so.
All right,
Yeah.
well,
It
I'm not as
was a
old as
while
Marty,
ago.
but I'm an old too.
And then
Okay.
I had another question.
Yes.
I had two questions about exterminators. I know when we were on when we had the Stuyvesant Park operations meeting, Commissioner Castro said that you were hiring more exterminators for Manhattan. Is that actually happening this year, or should funding be put into future years for that?
I think we're in the I think we're in the interview stage. I don't think we've hired anybody yet. But
Steve, there's rumors out there. I've heard there's only one exterminator for all of Manhattan parks. I've heard two. What's the real number?
I believe it's
That's not true.
I believe it's 3.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Nice to have that information. Okay, let's go back to the Q&A. I think there's a couple more. Cheryl says, hold on, I can't read that. It says, I don't know if it's important, but 2 sections of the fence at St. Vartan Park is gone. Yes, there's there's a new entrance that's going to be built. Sheena, you want to talk about that new entrance?
They're doing some repair work on the 35th Street side. And because they're gonna close it down for a good period of time, we had them open up the 2nd Avenue, 36th Street area for wheelchair accessibility. And they're gonna restore the fence back once it's, once the work has been completed. But they needed to do this in order to complete the work that's happening in the street. So it should be fairly quick. We hope. There's always some lag on when the work is going to be completed, but they agreed to do this for us because we know that the pickleball, and we know that wheelchair accessibility is needed. So that's going to be a short period of time that this is going to take place. So we needed to do it, besides closing down the park. So we didn't want that to happen. So we had to think of another way to do it.
Yep. Thank you for that overview. Peter, this is actually for Steve. When you gave the answer about Peter's Field and no pets, And let me point out that there will be Murphy Brothers will have a dog run, which is, you know, kind of close by. But Peter responded to your comment, Steve, by saying, well, if not on the field, what about the basketball courts? Is there room for discussion for dogs on the basketball court? Okay, that, and then one last one for Peter. What is the course of action to propose a change in the rules? There must be a course of action for people to even voice their opinion. You have certainly voiced it here today in this public forum, which at this point has 26 members. This will be on YouTube for all to listen to. But if you want to take it further, you could try to convince this committee to make a resolution or a letter, or if you can go to your city council member and try to get the council member to try to change the rules.
Well, the rules are really promulgated by the Parks Department itself, not by the city council.
But don't they have the power to change them if they wanted to, or at least make that?
Well, I don't think this is the kind of thing the council would ever do, but I don't believe it's within their purview. These are administrative regulations. You could, you know, you could ask the commissioner to change the rules.
Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying that. So there are your options. And Peter, we're happy to amplify your voice. Hopefully we've answered fully. We are about to wrap up. Before we do, with the news from Steve about Commissioner Castro, I just want to, on behalf of the committee, to hopefully you can express to him our appreciation and support for all that he supported for, you know, more than 20 years. A lot has been done in this district because of him. I can say that personally because a couple of things that have happened on St. Martin Park. So if you can express our gratitude and appreciation, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Of course. If we can go on to, I'm looking for a motion, I'm sorry, old new business. If anybody wishes to present any old or new business, please do so at this time. Just don't see anything. Peter does say thank you very much, Kevin.
I see
It's my
Letty's hand
pleasure.
raised.
Yes, Letty, go ahead. You have the floor, Letty.
Can I make a motion to adjourn, please?
Yes, I have one more comment.
Second.
That's in the, just before we do that.
Thank you, Marty.
Somebody who is seconding what Peter said about the dogs. Thank you for the second, even though we don't need one. This meeting is adjourned formally at, what time do we have? 9:17 p.m. Thank you all. We're going to be following up on a lot of this.
Thank you. Good meeting. Thank you so much.
Bye.